AM 1060 WMEL. The views expressed on the following program are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and are not necessarily those of WMEL staff, management, or advertisers.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, your host for Helping Seniors, the radio arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our program, Helping Seniors, our call sign, our website is helpingseniorsofbrevard.org, helpingseniorsofbrevard, all one word, .org. Our phone number is 473-7770 to reach our information specialist, and we exist to inform, to educate, and to connect seniors to resources. We're an information source, we're an education source, and we're a help people source. It's ironic, folks, that the federal government in December announced a $157 million program where they're going to fund up to 44 sites across the United States to do one or three track part programs to do exactly what this little organization has done for the last 5 years at a cost of less than $100,000 a year. They are going to pay for the awareness part of it up to $1 million over a 5-year period. For the information piece, another $1 million. And if you put the alignment part in, up to $4.5 million over a 5-year period, folks. It is exactly what Helping Seniors started 5 years ago. So, yes, we are applying to get the money to see if we can do something about improving what we already do in Brevard County. The sponsors for our program include Kindred In-Kind Home Health Care, the Eye Institute, Handy Probe of Space Coast, Riverview Retirement Community down in Palm Bay, the Eye Institute, Solid Bite, is called Dr. Sheldon's dentistry program now, but I'll get a better name for you for that, but it's still the old Solid Bite program. Bill Johnson, elder law attorney, W radio station WMEL AM 1060, Wusthof Hospital Systems, Love and Home Care, Atlantic Shores, Ebony News Today, and Wendy Handy of the Dale Sorensen Real Estate. I'll mention the rest of our sponsors on the second part of the show. But today, we've got a topic for our show. It's called Warnings to Seniors. Warnings to Seniors. And some of the things that Kay and I are going to talk about are simply things that have come to us over the last year via phone calls. When people call Kay, they tell her stories. She asks them questions, and we find out some of the real horror stories that involve scams, misuse of attorneys, failure for organizations that are getting federal and state funds to provide services. They fail to call the people back. So I get calls about trying to make something that's wrong right. And, it's hard to do this if the people that are being perpetrated on aren't willing to fight part of the battle themselves. So I can't appeal to you any more strongly than I'm going to do today, that if some of the things that Kay and I talk about are things that are situations which you have been encountered yourself, call Kay at 473-7770. Tell her what the problem is, and she can give you advice on who to call. Now,
right.
I myself have been trying to get some information from a certain state agency. I won't name it, but I'm on my third phone call. I haven't had the courtesy of a return call yet. If I don't get an answer to that third phone call, then I will call this information specialist for the Department of Elder Affairs, and I will tell her what is happening. And the reason I'm going to do that is because this woman, her job is to listen to what those of us, you and me, are having a problem with and getting answers to things that are supposed to be something to help us solve our problems. And the phone number, and I'm going to get Kay to talk about it too, and let her tell you what I say. But I'm going to mention the phone number first, and the lady's name, Kay, will pick up, and we're going to talk her name several times. But if you got that pencil and paper handy, here is a name and a phone number. If you don't like the way you've been treated by agencies that are funded through the state and federal funding, you can call Greta Jones. Greta, Gretta, Jones, Jones, at 850-414-2178. 850-414-2178. And I can't emphasize how important it is for all of us to be involved in letting the state authorities know what is not being done. See, every time we fail to cause the right answer to be given to us, we just exacerbate the problem. We cause stress. We cause tension. We cause heart attacks. We cause strokes. We cause all kinds of things. Right. Simply because we're not willing to fight for ourselves. And if that's one of the biggest complaints I can make known to seniors, and the reason I feel comfortable in doing it, because I'm a senior myself, and I feel very strongly about people my age not being willing to fight a system to make things right. Okay?
Right. Well, and I think if you call that number, and if you don't have your pen or pencil ready on that, please call Helping Seniors of Brevard at 473-7770. I've posted it right in front of the phone, so I can get that information out to anybody who didn't write it down today. But I think if you wanted to, Joe is absolutely correct. If you don't make the call, then the state is not going to know there exists a problem. And because I take all these calls, coming into Helping the Seniors, and the seniors say, well, I'm frustrated. I've left I don't know how many messages, or just recently, as yesterday, I got a call from a woman who said that she had been treated demeaningly. In other words, the woman on the other end of the phone really didn't treat her with respect. In other words, she was putting her down. And so this lady even called the executive director and didn't get anywhere. So here's a perfect scenario. If a frustrated person, is not being treated right, they're not getting return calls, they're persistently leaving their name and number, then Greta Jones needs to know about it, and I believe if even calling Greta Jones, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can remain anonymous.
You can.
Okay?
You can.
So you don't have to worry about your personal identity being out there and I'm going to start receiving calls back just because I made that call. But it's very, very important, and I concur with Joe, is take a moment and pick up the phone and let them know, because we can't change the system, but unless we do make those phone calls, that's the only way they're going to be alerted of what really, truly is going on.
Okay, I meet with some people that are pretty powerful players in politics in Brevard County. I meet with commissioners, and I have commissioners express to me, the same as I express to them, rights and wrongs. Now, having said that, if I went about my conversations in a nasty way with the commissioners or people that are in a position of power that can cause something to change for the better, if I don't do it the right way, I can't expect a reasonable return.
Right.
So, if you're going to be a complainer, or if you're going to demand things, be careful, because,
right.
it works two ways.
It does. And you have to be diplomatic. In other words, don't be picking up a phone and just saying, hey, just because I'm a senior, I deserve everything on a silver platter, and I'm not getting these services. What can you do for me? Come in with a gentler approach. Say, look, I think it's good that you should know these things are happening, and that, I do believe that I should be treated with respect.
Yeah. But Kate, as much as you and I talk about it, and people listening to this radio show, if you don't think that what Kay and I are talking about is a serious situation, then I really, really invite you to call Kay at 473-7770 and ask one of the two of us or the both of us to call you back and to talk to you one-on-one about what is happening. You see, I think it's so important that every time we help educate another person as to what's right and what's wrong, we can accomplish a lot. And here's one of the reasons I say that. We have been subjected to so many things about taxes, general revenue funds, use of county funds, paving of roads, giving businesses tax breaks, doing away with impact fees. There's a lot of truth in all of it. There is a lot of falseness in all of it, too. It's hard to call out the way our leaders use our tax dollars, but I think all of us as taxpayers have a real right, to honestly know how the dollars are being used. We read in the paper where so many of these funds are set to go someplace, and so much can be used for this, and so much can be used for that. There's not enough money in the budget for the paving of the roads. I think the problem is really deeper than that. And 7 or 8 years ago, I asked Florida Today to do two things: have the school board put in a month-by-month progression towards meeting their budget by maybe 15 or 20 categories so that people could see how the money was being used, and to do the same thing for the county. You, me, we are the taxpayers that fund a $1.1 billion budget for Brevard County. Yet not a single one of us has access to the knowledge of how the funds are really spent. And if you think you know, then what you don't know, just like at the federal level, how much is buried in certain programs that we say must be funded. Not general funds, but funds that are already designated that have to be spent. You start looking at the money to pay down the debt. You start looking at the money to fund the schools. You start looking at the money to pay retirement for county staff. Folks, there's a heck of a lot of money that's being used, and sometimes the more I look into it, I'm starting to question how much we really know about what's happening. Okay?
I agree. I mean, I don't think anybody has a clue on how much and where the money's being, spent accordingly. And that's something, that I'd like to bring out a point that, we're a nonprofit, and we ask for donations in order to do what we're doing here and to stay alive and reach out with our education. But I know that everything that we do is above board, very honestly done. But a lot of times people say, well, I'm going to give to this particular agency or organization, and I'm going to designate and put that on the check. That may be one way. But then how can one be really sure that that money is going to that particular program?
Yeah, a good point.
Yep.
I said the topic of the show was be warning to seniors.
Yep.
Folks, Kay and I both, independently in different sources, have been made aware of some inconsistencies in a national charity, which all of us are aware of, called Wounded Warriors Project. I just received a huge document from a guy down at Palm Bay And it turns out that the man, and I think his name is Molina or something like that, started with an M, the man that started the program years ago was using the funds the way we thought and think they're being currently used. However, that changed several years ago because this man that started it was forced out of the organization, and a young attorney took it over. He has changed the whole process to where they are making tons of money, and it seems and it appears that the products for Wounded Warriors are being sold in government exchange systems. They're sold in nonprofit stores, and we are getting an indication that much of the funding for Wounded Warriors is coming from those citizens 65 and older, and it's coming from millions of people in small amounts, but it's adding up to where the guy named Adderley or something like that, he is making well over $500,000
in salary.
His salary.
Yes.
And at the same time, some of the people that have been with the project since its inception have been forced out in the last 2 or 3 years. This is not hearsay, folks. This is stuff that's coming from documents that portray what the organization has done. So, again, it points out, when we take warning signs to seniors, think before you leap a lot of times. Just because something has a cute name attached to it, or we look like we're helping seniors, or look like we're helping Wounded Warriors, think about the federal government. They put millions of dollars into the VA system, and for all the problems that we purport to have with the VA system, I've been personally aware of some really fine things that have happened to the VA, and they've treated me fairly over the last 35 years. So I know. I have personal experience with these people, and they're good. But it's just like anything else. The guy that cries wolf too hard, too often, too loud, sometimes ends up being the cat following along trying to get caught up.
You're right.
And it's just not right. So we have to be careful what we say. We have to be careful what we do. But at the same time, we can't be afraid of trying to act out to help people, Kay.
Absolutely. And I think, with what you're saying about the Wounded Warrior Project, it's all over the Internet. I mean, when I looked first thing this morning, every couple hours there's a new post and I heard from another caller that it was on Channel 6 Orlando. They did a special investigation on it yesterday and had that on the news. But what I thought was kind of interesting too, in 2014, the Wounded Warrior Project lobbied in California and Florida to fight proposals that would have required nonprofits to increase financial transparency. Both bills passed in amended forms that did not significantly affect the charity. So how about that? That's right off the Internet today.
I know. It sounds sometimes when you listen to a radio talk show, folks, it sounds like maybe the hosts are doing a lot of complaining, or maybe they don't know what they're talking about. But I've learned over the years that where there's a little bit of fire, there might be a lot of fuel to make that fire bigger. So think about what you're giving your money to. Think about the scams. I've got, in the last 4 days, I've gotten 3 calls where they're telling me it's the IRS going to sue me because I haven't paid this or I haven't done that. First of all, the IRS does not ask for anything over the Internet or over the telephone.
That's right.
It has to be an official piece of paper. And everything I read, everything I see says if you get this kind of a call, ignore it. Ignore it. If it comes in a piece of paper with the IRS document on it, you sure better answer that.
Right.
But these phone calls you get, don't pay attention to them. Don't let them worry. If you get that kind of call Kay at 473-7770.
Absolutely.
And tell us what's happening, because that's one of the things we do is we compile this information. We keep statistics on it. We make it available to the state, and we are going to make it available to Congressman Posey's office, because we're learning that we need to do a better job of feeding our leaders some of the things we think are wrong.
Absolutely. Again, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and if we don't just stop squeaking, we've got to make sure that we squeak to the right sources.
Yeah, and
let them know.
Another thing is coming up that I just read a new document. There's going to be some new definitions coming out about what really constitutes elder abuse. I could give you all kinds of sources and everything else, but most of us have got some pretty good eyes and ears. Some of us don't see as well or hear as well, but we can still see and hear abuse when we hear it and see it. And if you got a question about what something constitutes elder abuse, there's a phone number, 1-800-96-ABUSE. 1-800-96-ABUSE, ABUSE. You call that, and all you have to do is tell them what you think you saw or heard. They will take care of it. You do not have to give your name. You
That's
don't have
right.
to give a darn thing. But you owe it to yourself and those that you care for to start doing something to let the purported leaders know about misuse of federal and state funds.
Absolutely. Joe, I'd like to really elaborate a little bit more on the second part of the show today regarding elder abuse and what different kind of elder abuse, what it really, the definition is. So people in the listening audience can understand that a little bit better.
Okay. We'll pick it up on the other side of the show, but do stay with us. We've got about 4 things. We want to talk a little bit more about VA aid and attendance, because a lot of people sure need to know about it. Stay with us.
You bet.
This is Joe Steckler, folks. You're back live for the second half of Helping Seniors, the radio arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our phone number at the office is 473-7770. Our website to access all our archived radio and TV shows, and we have 18 TV shows a week up on Space Coast Television and Bright House. Our website is helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Go on there, you might be amazed. We get calls from all over the United States about people seeing our website, saying what a great site it is and how easy it is to access information. The title of our show today is Warnings to Seniors. And for the second half of the show, I just remind everybody that the people who help us do what we do are our sponsors, especially our media sponsors, including Ear Care, Senior Scene Magazine, Hometown News, Spotlight Magazine, Seniors Helping Seniors, The Fountains of Melbourne, Beth Courtney of the Braswell Courtney Financial Team, Barbara McIntyre, Home Equity Loan Specialist, Canadian Meds of Melbourne, and Wiederman Malik Attorneys, and Vitas Hospice. We're working on more. We'll add more to the list. There's just a heck of a lot we're doing. We're building a new consortium. We're trying to branch out with Kindred Hospital and Wusthof Hospital to give you better access to care. But most importantly, we need to know what you can't find out yourself. Now, Kay, over the last 14, 15 months, has had so many people call her and say, you listen to what I say. Why don't agencies that get federal and state monies, why don't they return our phone calls? So realizing that Kay and I are powerless to make those agencies return the calls, we contacted the Department of Elder Affairs. And they have an information specialist up there by the name of Greta Jones. Greta Jones. Her phone number is 850-414-2178.
That's it.
850-414-2178. Call Greta. Tell her what your problem is. You know, if we don't speak out, if we seniors and those who care for seniors don't speak out, we're not going to make the system work the way it's supposed to work. It's a great system. There are a lot of great things about it. there are a lot of things that are wrong with it, but the things that are wrong can be fixed if we want to get involved bad enough to make it get fixed. So,
and when you call Greta, you can remain anonymous. So don't be fearful in making that phone call. That's the only way the state's going to learn what problems do exist. And I take calls all day long from people telling me, "Well, I'm giving up." And I said, "Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep calling. Keep calling." I said, "I can't make that call for you, but you just keep on track here." But, you might want to just jot down how many times you have tried to call that organization or agency so that when you do talk to Greta, you can give her some actual facts and numbers.
Yeah. Kay wants to talk a little bit more about transportation and abuse, but I'll tell you about a phone call we got, and this had to do with a lady, 89 years old, called and said that she had called an agency for transportation. And here's what the agency that receives what we thought was state funding for transportation, here's what she was told. 89 years old. She can't drive. She needed help to get to a doctor. The agency she called said, "In order for us to help you, you have to come into our office and fill out our paperwork." And a woman, 89, can't drive, no car, needs to get to a doctor, says, "Can you send me the paperwork so I can send it back to you?" "No, we can't do that. You have to come in to our office to fill the paperwork out." Well, I called the state agency I thought it was responsible. And the guy said, "Joe, we would never make that kind of a dumb requirement on somebody." He said, "It's not us. So we're trying to find out how this agency does get their funding to provide, quote, free transportation, because we advertise it. If we're going to advertise something, we want to know what all the ins and outs are so that if we make a recommendation to you to call somebody, that you are, in fact, going to get what we say you're going to get if you call for it."
Right.
So if you do take advice that I give you on this radio show and you don't get what I think you're supposed to get, please call Kay, because we will investigate it, because I have never given you a steer for a service that I didn't already know was supposed to happen the way I said it over the radio. So that's why it's so important for you all to know about when we talk about scams and stuff, because to me, an 88-year-old person that needs to get to a doctor that doesn't have the funds to do it, that, to me, being treated that way is another form of elder abuse. I already said they're going to redefine some things on elder abuse, and Kay wants to. What did you want to talk about, Kay, on elder abuse?
Just going back to the lady that's 89 years old, and you think about it, it's kind of contradictive, because here she called me back and said that she had left several messages, and she did not get a return call back. So she's going to be another person that I'm going to see if I can get her to call Greta Jones in Tallahassee and report that, because it's not right. But, I mean, here she was desperately needing to get her hearing aid batteries replaced, and she was down to just the one, for the one ear left. And she's looking for transportation to get to her audiologist and so forth. So it's critical. She needs to be able to hear, and she needs transportation. So it was kind of like when she told me that she had to come in to sign the paperwork in front of them. Well, wait a minute. She was calling for transportation. How's she going to get there? So fortunately, I have some other resources that I referred her to, but, it's just not right.
Yeah, but let me pick up on what you just said, because it's important for our people to know this. In the process of making my call yesterday to the state agency that does the funding, the person asked me, he said, "Well, did the person try TransServe or another state-funded agency?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "They usually have at least require a week waiting list."
Yep.
And here is what the man that runs the program at the state said to me. He said, "Joe, if a person has a requirement, it requires faster service, we have a way to make that happen."
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that before.
Interesting.
What is interesting is that when you bypass, folks, some of the stuff that we are told on a local level and go back to the actual funding agency, we find out that there are more than one way to skin a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm saying to you is, if you don't like the answer you get from an agency that's purported to be funded through state and federal funds at a local level, call Kay.
You bet.
Tell her what the problem is. We will do some research. Now, we may not be able to solve the problem, but I can assure you that your call to us will cause the oversight agencies going all the way back up to the state where the funding starts to be more cognizant of what is happening at the local level. It's just like me. When I make a phone call, if I don't get a decent answer over a certain period of time, and I don't expect it to be immediate, I make a call, and I do put them on a report.
Yep.
Sometimes you need to put people on a report. You got to be careful. You have to be careful, but you have to. One of the jobs, folks, for nonprofits is to use the funds the right way that are entrusted to them. And that was part of the reason that I protested the way the County Housing and Human Services Group was using the funds for the recent CBO project. And this is what Commissioner Smith has made a recommendation that we do away with county-based funding and we put that money in the road project. That's the wrong way to do it, folks. It really is.
Yep.
We take away the money that the nonprofits get, and they don't get very much. But if we take away the capability to do some things that bring in other additional funds to help people in Brevard County, in the long run, we will suffer from that. But that's right. Not to say, Kay, that some of the monies that the county gives to organizations should never be given to them in the first place. Right. I strongly object if the county says we don't give things to sectarian organizations, then we shouldn't do it.
Right.
If we're going to fund certain private schools, and then fund all private schools with our county funds.
Right.
But that's what we got. $600-700 million going into the school budget is supposed to take care of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Why? Why are the scarce, really scarce funds for community-based operations, why are they given to private schools? That's a
good question.
It's a question people need to know.
Well, and not only that, and kind of just reflecting on what you were talking about and all these different organizations and agencies, it boils down to, where's the accountability?
Yeah, accountability.
That's it. I mean, how's come there isn't more of a, what's the word I'm looking for, but to prove that this is being used for this program? I mean, there isn't really any of that in place. I mean, here's your funds. Go at it. And, it's just like you say, if you're going to fund one, then you need to do all. Why segregate just one particular?
All right, let's go back and talk about something you've been in a job, about 17 months now.
Mm-hmm.
In the 17 months that you've been doing a job, have you had a single caller say, Kay, I called the Veterans Assistance Program and they failed to return my call, or they did not help me? Have you ever had a call like that?
Not for the VA.
You have not. And
No.
Why do you think you haven't had that? Why?
Well, I think they're accountable.
Exactly right.
They're accountable.
Yes, they are. And they will answer questions over the phone.
That's right.
If you go in, you stand in line, and you wait your turn, they will see you.
Yes.
And they're just a super good organization. But what's important, folks, is that we all need to understand this. And I probably will talk about it every radio show I do, as long as I'm doing a show on this radio station in the future. The VA Aid and Attendance Program can assist a lot more people than the so-called veterans. There are spouses of these veterans. Many of them are widows unremarried, and that makes them still eligible for the VA aid and attendance program, and they don't know it.
And, Joe, I have to elaborate on that because so many of the ladies that call me, the senior ladies, and they may call, like for transportation, as an example. But, you know, I'm not asking, are you on a limited income? Well, yes, I'm just getting Social Security. And I said, well, when you were married, was your husband in the service? Well, yes. He was in the Korea War, Vietnam, or World War II. And I said, you know, he served at least one day during the time of war. Well, yes. And I said, do you know about the aid and attendance program? She says, I have no idea. But what happens is now not only am I helping that caller with what they call initially about, but it may make a difference of some $1,400 a month for that woman who's simply surviving on maybe $1,100 a month. So it makes all the difference in the world. And I think, Joe, that's what separates helping seniors of Brevard from other nonprofit.
I think so, too.
Because we go the extra mile to make and develop that relationship with those callers. And they call me back and they say, thank you. You've taken the time. You know, I didn't feel rushed. Here's a number. Goodbye. But you opened up some other avenues to help my lifestyle. And that means a heck of a lot.
Well, I had a phone call from a lady last night at my home that said that she wanted to know if John Farrell and Rob Cramp, and John Farrell is the guy that runs Daily Bread, and Rob Cramp is the man that is the executive director for Housing for the Homeless. And they're unknown to me. I wasn't aware of the fact that Brevard County probably has one of the best reputations in the state of Florida for lack of homeless among veterans. Most of our veterans do have a place to put their head down at night, and a lot of us due to the efforts of these two men and their organizations. But what they've done is they try to collaborate and work together, and not just serve people meals, not just put people up in a hotel. What they try to do is get the people into a home or get them into a place where they can pay for them, help them pay the burden of cost for a 6-month period to help them get established with a job, get their families established.
Right.
And you see, you don't see this in a newspaper. This is all stuff that's done underneath the table that you don't know about. And instead of giving your money to a scam that asks you to pay money for the sheriff's program or do this kind of stuff, gosh, don't give it to these tax organizations that are taking 70-80% of the money that you give to pay their employees. But
right.
Think about how you can help local organizations that want to give back in the right way, where they get people out of the woods at night, get them into a decent place to live. I talked to John Farrell down at Daily Bread, and they feed a meal that includes a salad, a dessert, a meat entree, and a couple of vegetables. It's a 2 or 3 course meal, and it's good. And the cost of doing that is less than $5 a person, and they raise all that money themselves to pay this. But they also participate in a community effort to raise food. And I wasn't aware that the Meals on Wheels program actually gets food from Daily Bread and to help prepare the meals that we think are going out to serve people. And I talked to somebody. They called me and said that, yeah, they've seen they help deliver Meals on Wheels, but he said the amount of food that's there is enough to what they would call an appetizer for them in a restaurant.
Wow.
But still, it keeps people from starving.
Right.
It gives them a nutritious meal. It may not be what you and I would want to eat, but if a person is starving, they have nothing, have no way to get food, Meals on Wheels is a tremendously wonderful program.
It is.
What it needs is maybe better management so that people can be served meals 7 days a week.
Yeah. Yes, that was always a question. What do the people do the other 2 days of the week that really can't afford to have food?
Well, they do serve meals on the weekend, and I always thought that that the meals were served or prepared by the food kitchen and then delivered by volunteers. It turns out they're delivered by volunteers, but they're also paid for by organizations such as the volunteers that want to kick the money in to pay $6.50 for each meal is prepared on a weekend.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, folks, it's just like the commissioners not wanting to increase our taxes to pay for road repairs. I don't think we need to take the money away from nonprofits that help prevent people from having needs that cannot be met. It's you're in a catch-22 situation. It all goes back to complete transparency and honesty from our commissioners, our county manager, and our commissioners fighting to get the money into their own districts.
Yes.
There's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth and knowledge. And, it'd be if we lived in utopia, you and I wouldn't be talking about this stuff.
That's right. Well, I wanted to mention, I got a call yesterday afternoon from a lady, and her husband moved from New Jersey to Brevard County. And she was really looking to, have resources. Well, who do I turn to? Where do I go? And things like that. And we got talking a little bit, and I said, do you realize that if we go by AARP standards in Brevard County, that's 50 and up, that it accounts to about 1 in every 2 people? She said, wow. And I said, guess what? The secret's out. Brevard County is a wonderful place to move from, the Northeast and stay warm and so forth. But, it goes back to the fact that helping seniors is all about providing those callers with the appropriate resources. And through the media efforts, the print, the 8-page newsletter appearing in Senior Scene magazine, your articles being published in Hometown News, Aldea Today, Ebony News Today, and then this radio program. So we're going a full circle, Joe, and I don't know of another nonprofit organization understanding the fact that our senior population is only going to be larger, but we're providing a service for those callers.
Yeah, and here's something I think we all need to know. All of you, those people that are moving here from New York and New Jersey, the care dollars they got in New York and New Jersey do not follow them from that state to this state.
Good
they come
point.
to Florida and pick up what they need to pick up in Florida. That's one of the reasons that we have 45,000 people on the Medicaid waiting list. And I just saw another statistic yesterday, folks, through the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, that in the last 2 years, we have added, because we made it simpler for people to get on Medicaid, we have added 13 million more people to the Medicaid rolls in the last 2 years.
It's only going to get larger, Joe.
It's going to get worse.
Yes.
It's going to get worse because we're getting older, we're living longer, and we have to do a better job.
That's right.
We need to be honest in what we're doing. We need to stop at the local level having the same type of add-ons in our budgets that they do at the state and national, federal level.
Right.
Until we can arrive at some semblance of honesty in where these dollars are spent, and we can have commissioners that represent their constituents honestly, fairly, and openly, we need to complain. We need to ask. We need to ask questions.
Call 473-7770. We've got all the numbers here for you that we talked about today.
All right. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Kay, for being on the show. And thank you all for all you do to help us. And remember, you can always send us a check to help because we do need the money to pay the bills.
I was going to bring that up, too.
All right. Thank you, Kay. Thank you. And thank you all. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.